Wonderful to be here at Globant's new Miami headquarters. Really excited to be speaking with you guys today. My name is Juha Mikkola. As mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Wyncode Academy. We're South Florida's leading code school, recently acquired by BrainStation. I'm also the incoming chair for the Beacon Council Tech Committee. I'm really excited to be speaking today with Michael Feathers, the chief architect at Globant. Michael, great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
Looking forward to speaking today.
Yeah, me too.
So just to get started, I wanted to ask you, why is digital and kind of the digital capabilities of a company so important these days?
Yeah, because it touches everything. Okay, that's the thing that's kind of funny with it, is that a lot of times people just basically think about simple things they can do to go and basically extend their business. But the thing is, the capabilities that you have with digital, like new channels and different ways of working, they're enabled by different digital technologies. It's just every company is basically dealing with this in some manner or another, and there's very far to go with it. It's just not. It's not just like a couple of pieces. It's basically a full constellation of things.
That's great. And I think it's been such exciting news to see Globant's expansion here in Miami and really coming into the city here. And you're obviously somebody with a lot of history here in the city and have kind of seen the scene develop and grow. Like, what are your thoughts on Miami right now, and why is it so important for Globant to be here and doing the things that you guys are doing?
Well, it really seems like the epicenter of a lot of change, right? And it's just, I used to live here. I actually grew up here in Miami, and it was kind of amazing because for a long period of time, it didn't seem like it had very much of a tech scene at all. And the few of us that were in tech would basically do other things, at times. The thing that was interesting to notice is just as everything kind of like cohered, it just became like a real big deal. And I think a lot of it really is like the people from different cultures, favorable tax law, all sorts of things like this just kind of came together all in one, nice way. That's kind of nice, I guess.
Michael, when companies are looking to transform digitally, what are usually the sticking points that you see? What are some of the challenges you commonly see these organizations facing?
Generally, it seems like organizations grow with a particular structure to go and solve the particular problems that they have. But basically, digital is extremely disruptive. So you basically have to revisit just about everything within the organization. Basically how you're staffed, the processes you have in place, all these different things. So yeah, it's just one of those things where everything is up for grabs in a way. And quite often people are not really ready for that level of engagement. They're not really ready to go and actually start approaching things in that manner.
Yeah, when we were speaking before, you were mentioning something really interesting, which is like, obviously companies have a code base, they have a product, but it's really that code base, when you look at it, is a reflection of the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of like if you go in and see someone's code base, what does that tell you about the company?
Yeah, it tells you quite a bit. It's almost like when you basically have a tree and you kind of like do a cross section of the tree and you basically see all the growth rings. So you can kind of like get a sense of like when times were good and when times were poor, rainfall in the case of trees and stuff like that. But yeah, basically all these things, because you're dealing with one system, all these things tend to impact each other. And processes that you have in place quite often are artifacts of things that went wrong in the organization previously, right? So you have to be able to go and revisit all these things. And it can be quite a bit of work to go and do that. You have to start questioning some deep assumptions within an organization.
And obviously you're a leader in the space of legacy code, and have written a really popular book about that and really figuring out how to work with that in organizations. Yeah. Like in that context, and I love the tree analogy, looking at it from the point of view that this organization has maybe 20, 30 years of growth and different eras of leadership, what have been some of the biggest learnings, I guess, as you kind of go through and uncover some of these past times as you're going through that?
Pretty much you have to kind of figure out what the shape of things happen to be, like the shape of the code, the shape of the organization, and figure out what's working, what isn't. And you almost decide exactly where you need to go and basically structure certain interventions, both at the technical level and also the social level within an organization. So you start to develop a little bit of reference for what's there, because you can't change everything, right? So you have to go and sort of figure out where the strategic areas that you want to make some changes in the overall structure of the system to make things really kind of gear it towards the future, what it needs to be.
Michael, how do you measure success as you're kind of going through this digital transformation in an organization? How do you look at that as sort of a scale? How are you kind of getting better? How are you measuring that over time?
Yeah, there are a lot of metrics we apply with that, and one of the things we kind of look at is basically who's talking to who, and then basically looking at cycle time for, software delivery, things along those lines. The communication structure of the organization is vitally important, and the communication structure does reflect itself within the technical systems that are built. So yeah, we're constantly looking at things like failure rates, cycle time, things like that, in order to go and sort of get a sense of what the health of the organization happens to be as a delivery unit, and how to make things better.
You're an early adopter of Agile, and that's something we believe greatly at Wyncode and BrainStation, and really sort of test-driven development and a lot of these best practices. It's interesting because you're probably seeing cases where companies have followed those maybe for a time, in some cases maybe not at all.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of see using that kind of to the advantage of digital transformation, but where do you also see those things going sort of in the future?
Yeah, very interesting question. The thing is that testing, automated testing in the context of software development basically goes and gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. You're able to change one thing without everything breaking, or basically if something breaks, you find out immediately and then you're able to go and do something about it. So yeah, I think that testing is part of a bigger story related to monitoring systems and things along those lines. And I think a lot of what we end up doing is putting sensors in systems to understand how things are kind of working. And then you basically know where you need to make the changes that you require going forward. So that's the bigger story, is it's really all about understanding.
Why should companies seek reinvention? Why is this so important?
Well, you're pretty much forced to.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's kind of like, the environment never stays still, right? So you constantly have to kind of look at what you have that's, working correctly, and then basically figure out how to go and target the structure of your systems in order to go and basically accommodate new options. One of the things that we are looking at quite a bit is it's really like building the engines of innovation within an organization, right? How do you basically invent? How do you reinvent in order to go and actually, make yourself, able to go and meet new challenges? There are many things you don't even really see as opportunities until you basically get in the cycle of reinventing yourself. And once you're able to do that continuously, then you basically can see how your capability and your capacity enables you to do more. And yeah, I'm always surprised by that quite often an organization will say, well, we're not the organization that does that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But you can make yourself the organization that does that sort of thing by just adopting tighter cycles and working in different ways.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. I mean, you obviously have experience seeing a lot of companies that have attempted this.
Yeah.
Would you say, are there like kind of key things that you've seen that are musts in order to make it work? Versus maybe companies that have tried, and haven't been as successful in going through this process?
For the most part, it's really having a very open attitude and basically getting everybody on board with respect to understanding that change is about to occur, and that it's going to be very conscious change, and making it a very safe change in order to go and actually reconfigure yourself into what you need to be, right? So that's the primary thing.
And are there things like in a team, for example, a team environment that you can do to make people feel safe, instead of feeling like, oh, maybe this is going to threaten my job, or maybe I can't move fast enough with these technology changes? Are there certain things that you can do at that level that can kind of help with the process?
Yeah, basically sort of getting people involved, and basically understanding the possible directions things can go in, and basically sort of then, communicating the direction things are going to go in once that's actually decided, right? I think that basically one of the things that's really a problem in many organizations is not really basically going and be able to see yourself in the organization in a year, 5 years, 10 years. And as long as people are able to go and see ways forward, for themselves, then they feel much more comfortable.
Yeah, and almost getting them to buy in, realize that they can contribute to this change and be a part of it.
Yeah, it's not a thing that happens to you, it's a thing you're part of.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. In terms of the Miami ecosystem, I mean, it's amazing that we're here in this office in Miami, mm-hmm. and it's also kind of coming in a way full circle for you as an early Miami tech pioneer in this scene. And for us also, like the last 7 years as we've been part of Wyncode, we've seen
mm-hmm.
really crazy change in this city. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what does it feel like coming back here, after a few years away? It
feels really good, and it's great to see it actually happening, because for years I worked at a company in Miami that was not really startup oriented in any sense. And I spent a lot of time doing consulting work where I'd fly out and basically do things and come back home, right? And people would always go and say, what's up with the tech scene in Miami? How come nothing's really happening? But I think that all the ducks got in a row at some point, and you have certain vital centers like Wynwood, which Wyncode is
mm-hmm.
Kind of named after,
yeah,
where people can run into each other in the streets, and then you start to develop a buzz and an energy. And that it seems to be growing every time I visit. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. And I think one of the really cool things is Globant coming into the Miami scene in a big way now. And I think one of the things that I've learned about you guys is really the fact that it's almost like a talent incubator. You know, it's an opportunity for people to, from Miami, really reinvent themselves in a way and become technologists themselves, you know, and be able to grow. Like, can you talk a bit about how important that is, maybe for the future of the city as well as from a talent perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So we are all about talent. We're about developing talent, finding talent. We know how to basically build organizations, build teams in order to go and basically do high capacity, high performance work. And you know, that's the funny thing about being a startup is that essentially you need to be fast. You need to go and actually sort of work in a very agile, flexible manner. And what's amazing as well is that the thing that makes startups valuable that way, the same kind of thing can happen in other organizations, and they basically need to learn how to configure themselves to develop these high energy centers within them in order to go and actually do the things they need to do.
So Michael, in terms of Globant and the verticals and industries you guys work in, can you talk a little bit about who you guys are kind of primarily working with right now, and maybe a couple of examples of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing in life sciences, and that's like biotech is a big thing within Miami that's been here for a while, but kind of like really growing now. And especially, Miami is kind of like has been a tourist town for ages. So there's a lot of things in that, that area of like things related to tourism, so hospitality along with life sciences and things along those lines. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And we obviously deal at Wyncode and now BrainStation a lot with junior developers and junior UX UI designers that are just starting their career. And there are some may be watching this and being like, oh, what an amazing career you've had. Do you have any advice for somebody who might just be starting in terms of like how to set themselves up on a path for success?
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess the main thing with that is just to be really curious about things, right? And it's like, learn a bunch of different technologies. It's not enough to go and basically learn just one particular technology. Sometimes it's useful to go and learn one technology and then learn the competing technology at the same time, so you can kind of like trade off between them. And when you trade off between them, and you start to go and see the differences, and that helps you develop better mental models about how to go and how to solve problems. So I think that's a key thing. And the other thing too is collaborate. If you basically, and I guess with Wyncode, you must have people are working together as they basically go through, the
correct. There's a whole group aspect to it. Because in real life, that's how the world works. You're working with different people, and we actually have a lot of cross collaboration between the web development and the digital design tracks as well.
It's great.
In real life, that's really who you're going to be working with as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. It's not just coding. It's like you have to learn what other people are doing in the organization, and the more that you are able to align yourself within the different things that are happening within different businesses, the better off you are. So there's that. So what went through your mind when you were developing Wyncode? Did you just basically see Miami as an opportunity in that way? And
yeah, great question. I mean, for us, when we looked to start 7 years ago, it was really a different scene here, as we touched on before. And for us, we're actually looking at a few different markets. So we're looking at potentially Austin, also Los Angeles, and then Miami. And I think for us, Miami seemed like the least developed at the time, which to us equated as the most opportunity, which maybe isn't like the right way to look at it because it was also the most challenging, now when we look back. But it really felt like a scene that had all the right ingredients. We have a lot of capital here, which I think is really important, and it's finally starting to get off the sidelines. People are starting to realize that tech is in an industry that they want to invest in. I think also the lifestyle aspect is really important.
Yeah.
It's definitely an amazing city to live in. It's, if you're going to work super, super hard and you have a couple hours off on a weekend, it's great that you can go outside and enjoy the weather instead of being cooped up and being like, oh, I missed the only nice day last week, by working on my project. So I think that was an important one. And then I think the connection to Latin America is huge. It's definitely a global capital when you think about it that way. And I think that was sort of from a tech scene perspective being overlooked a little bit. So when you combine all those things, we really, really thought that this was a city where we could have an impact and kind of join this early stage tech scene, and we're really glad we did. Our first class was 14 students, and we didn't really know where it was going to go from there. I think our second day was when Emerge Americas started. So
cool.
Our first trip with the students was to go to Emerge for their first year, and we're like, man, what's going to happen with all of this stuff? And then we had a company that actually came out and said, we're going to hire graduates. We guarantee that we'll give them the tuition back if they get a job here right after. And that helped kind of validate the model. And after that, we never really looked back. You know, the next class was a bit bigger, the next class was bigger. And what we really thought about the whole time was, how can we make sure that people are getting jobs? Like, how can the industry kind of connection be there? So we always worked really closely with hiring partners. And now looking back, we graduated almost 1,000 people, which is really great for the tech scene. And most have stayed in South Florida, which is awesome. But we also have people working at Amazon and Microsoft and American Express, JP Morgan Chase. So it's like companies from outside the market kind of validating the quality of talent was really big for us. And in January, we joined BrainStation, which is a global skills training provider, similar to Wyncode, but just on a massive scale. Now we're part of a group that has 100,000 graduates. We have over 1,000 companies that have hired in this region, which is really, really great for our network and for our students. So we're really excited about it, and I think we just want to keep focusing on high quality education and helping people in Miami really realize that the talent is here. It's always been here, but maybe the skills that the people here were being taught were not relevant to tech careers. So just making that little switch and helping people reinvent themselves.
Very cool. Yeah, it's really cool with Miami because it seems like some cities are like one or two things, and Miami is like 12 things.
Yeah,
in a way, isn't
exactly.
it? It's kind of a neat thing about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting place, and for me personally, what I love is how international it is here.
Yeah,
It really is a global city, and I think that is something that I've always loved about this city.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure to speak with you, Michael. Thanks for the time. Really great insights, and so wonderful to be here at Globant. Really excited to be a part of this movement and to see what this company is doing here with the recent announcement of 150 high-tech jobs coming to Miami. It's exactly what the city needs. Couldn't be a better time for the announcement, and really, really looking forward to see what the future has in store for the company here in Miami.
Thanks so much. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.